Welcome to episode 12 of the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast. We recorded this without Brock and without knowing who would be in the Super Bowl, but despite these obvious disadvantages, Shannon and I had fun talking about football, T-Swift, and why it's okay to cancel youth group that night. We also talked about the need for both tradition and innovation in youth ministry. When is it okay to say, hey, we've always done it this way? Plus, we confess our propensity towards procrastination. Is it part of the youth pastor gene? Cheers from me and Shannon, who are now friends. So roll down the windows and let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Youth Ministry Sherpas Coast to Coast podcast. My name is Steve Anderson. I am joined by the wonderful Shannon Dunn. Hey Shannon.
Hey Steve, how's it going?
It's going great. We are back today again without our third co-host, Brock Morgan.
Brockless.
Yes. He's over there across the pond. I don't know what he's doing, but I'm sure he's having a great time without us. But you know what, Shannon, I could actually get used to this.
I mean, we don't need him. We said it last week, and I think we did just fine.
Yeah.
Just fine. No, I miss him.
We're just teasing you, Brock.
We
love
him.
you. He'll be back. I think for the next episode, I'm not sure when we're recording, but probably back for episode 13, which this is episode 12 of our show. And this is actually like season 2 of our Coast to Coast podcast. If you are not familiar with us, we are 3 youth ministry veterans. Shannon is in Malibu, California.
That's right.
Brock is in Chino, California, but he's formerly from, well, he's all over, but he was in the East, on the East Coast in DC, and I am in Frederick, Maryland. So we are representative of pretty much all of the United States across the country. So East Coast to West Coast, at least. And we are here every episode to encourage youth workers to keep going, to share our wisdom, and to join some great conversations. So thanks for joining us today.
That's right. We like to say that we're youth ministry with the windows down, right?
That's right. Yes.
We get a little bit vulnerable here and there, or at least
sometimes. Vulnerability is a really, really important characteristic, I think. I talk about it a lot with my team.
Yeah.
So there will be no tears shed today, though. Even though last episode was about tears in youth ministry, I don't think I'm going to cry today. I don't know.
Me either. Who knows, though? It could happen.
It wouldn't be so bad, would it?
No.
Well, like I said, this is episode 12, and we are recording this in January. It's going to come out on, I think, January 30th. By that time, we'll know who's participating in Super Bowl 58.
Woo, you even knew what number Super Bowl it is. You're a fan.
Yeah, you know how I know that?
How?
Because I'm 58 years old.
Oh,
so
wow.
I have a cheat sheet.
Oh, that's kind of fun. Okay.
So I always know what Super Bowl it is because I know how old I am. But anyway, yeah. Super Bowl will be coming up. I do.
Hoping gets to the Super Bowl at this point?
Well, my team lost this past weekend. We won't talk about that. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Okay.
But actually, I do, and maybe by the time you hear this, they'll be in the game, or maybe not. But I'm hoping for Buffalo, actually.
Okay.
Because they've never won. Because I'm kind of tired of some of the other teams. No offense, Kansas City fans, and I can't root for the Ravens because that's our arch rival.
All right.
So yeah, I was listening to this 30 for 30 ESPN documentary today at the gym, and it was about the Buffalo Bills losing 4 straight Super Bowls, and just reaffirmed I hope they can get there and win, but we'll see.
You know, I'm just always for Taylor's team, so.
Oh gosh, that's how you pick a football team.
Well,
what if she leaves? What if she leaves Pat and starts dating Josh? Would you switch?
Listen, you know that if her and Kelsey break up, we're gonna have the greatest album of all time. So it's fine.
That's true. That's true.
No, actually, my best friend lives in Kansas City, so I have been rooting for Kansas City for a few years now.
I don't
So,
believe it.
okay.
It's all about T Swift.
It is
Whatever.
always.
Whatever. Anyway, by the time this comes out, it'll probably be two different teams, and
I'm sure.
this will be completely irrelevant. But that's what we're saying today. So, yeah. Other than being a T Swift fan, do you actually watch the Super Bowl? Is
Great
it a thing?
question. Great question. Yes, normally.
Okay.
I don't know what your church does for Super Bowl to celebrate. Maybe let's talk about that. But
Yeah.
so our church has these massive event that we've been doing for like 40 years called the Father-Daughter Valentine's Day. It's not that
Aw.
unique, but it's really, really big for our size church and our size community. So it is like an all-out event. And it always happens Super Bowl weekend. It's always
Right.
the weekend before Valentine's Day.
Right.
So this year I became the one in charge of this event, and I just decided, why not kill myself on one night? Let's also throw a mother-son dance, because we've already rented this big wedding tent. We've already
Okay.
booked all these things that we can double up on. So by the time the Super Bowl comes around this year, I will I actually was asleep last year during it because of these events as well, but I will probably try to watch and probably just pass out cold. So
Okay.
that's where I'll be.
Yeah. All right. Well, our youth group meets on Sunday nights, and on occasion we have had a Super Bowl party, but I stopped that. It's been a while now. And so, yeah, I just like to be home with my family or with friends watching the game, and
So
maybe to have able to have an adult beverage during the game, perhaps.
yeah. So you can't. You're telling me you cancel youth group for football? Is that what you're
it's the
saying?
truth. It's the truth. You cannot fight the culture on that one. So this year, what I'm doing is we're going to do a almost Super Bowl party on the Sunday before.
Okay.
We had this like extra night out of our series. I'm like, let's do some of the Super Bowl. We'll have an almost Super Bowl party. I've got it all figured out. Going to break into 4 teams and have 4 quarters of games, and it'll be fun. But that kind of leads us into the first segment, which we're going to talk about today. And we're calling this segment, "But We've Always Done It That Way." A commonly heard phrase in church, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So the idea of this conversation is, what's the balance between tradition and innovation in your student ministry, and what's the value of each, and kind of how do they play out against each other? Because I'm guessing there's youth ministries that have done the same thing always, forever and ever, and then there's some that change stuff probably all the time.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about maybe what that might look like to have a little bit of both. So Shannon, what's like, where does your church fall on the tradition versus innovation scale?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like in some ways I consider us a newish church, even though we're not, because during COVID we had so much turnover and transition. Our senior leadership, the people that were attending the church, all sort of changed at the same time, honestly. Partially due to COVID and partially due to a senior leader who left right before COVID happened.
Okay.
I think he had some sort of inside intel from God about that one. But,
about COVID, yeah.
Yeah.
He got out while the getting was good.
But so to say, I think so many churches actually had the opportunity to get rid of and innovate because of COVID. It's like one of the things that I think happened. I talked to a lot of people, youth pastors, who are like, yeah, I walked into a new ministry and they had all these traditions, and I was forced to keep some of them that I hated. Trips, programs, things that were just like crazy. And then they tell this one, I'm thinking of one specific, but I've heard it many times. They're like, but then COVID saved me, like I didn't have to bring it back after COVID. And so it's interesting that I think COVID forced our hand in innovation. And I think that's a good thing. I think there's some benefit to respecting history and tradition of things, or at least knowing what the history and tradition of things. I think especially when you come into a new church or a new place, it's good to know what has been done, what people love, what are sort of sacred cows. But I think if you don't innovate, you die. Honestly.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I'm pro innovation.
Okay. Interesting.
You seem like you
Yeah.
have a
Well,
different. You want me to go deeper in that, or you want to take your stab at something first?
I think the contrast for us is that I think because of my longevity here, there are
Mm-hmm.
established things. If anyone's going to innovate in the youth ministry, it's going to come from me. And
Yeah.
there are things that we do that I've created over time that I love. And I think they've come to have value because of the tradition of them in some
Mm-hmm.
cases. That kids kind of know what to expect, parents know what to expect. They look forward to certain moments of the year when those things are going to happen. And I do think there's a really strong value in that. And I'm a very sentimental person, so it's hard for me to move on from some of those, probably
Yeah.
to my detriment sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we have things like a fall retreat. Well, this year will be our 25th fall retreat,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a talent show in the spring. This will be like our 10th one of those. Some other retreats, but we do innovate, Shannon. We do change things, and that's a hard process.
Well, and I think just because you repeat the same fall retreat doesn't mean you're not innovating, because likely you are not doing the fall retreat the same way you did that fall retreat 25
True,
years ago. So it
true.
doesn't negate the ability to have innovation and to change things within that
Yeah,
event.
I kind of refer to those things as tweaks more than innovations.
Yeah.
We'll tweak this or tweak that, make it a little bit different. And we do that a lot because I think it's really important to consistently evaluate and throw surprises in and change things up on people.
Yeah.
What's something that you guys have, like a major thing that you've changed in your time at your church in the youth ministry, and how did it come about and how did it go? And how did it affect people? What was your kickback from folks?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like the thing that comes to mind the most is like the shifts in like what night of the week we
Oh,
meet.
that's a big one.
It's big, right?
Yeah.
And we've actually, I feel like COVID caused us to change it, but also it's changed before that. Like there's just been tweaks in it. And I've just found that with different seasons and different students that are involved and things like that, it's sort of necessary. So we also used to meet on Sunday nights, and for a long time that was a really great night to meet and it worked really well. And then all of a sudden it was like something about the students we had that was a night they weren't going to come because they're doing homework.
Mm,
And it just really shifted that. And so we went to a midweek night, which also sucked for homework and sports too, to be honest with you.
right,
But
right.
it ended up being better for us than the Sunday night did. But we did Sunday nights forever, and we thought that was like the night. Like, you see, you do it right. I think I would have
Yeah,
said that in a long time. Like, we thought that was it.
yeah.
But we had to end up being flexible when we realized like our students, our families weren't about that. And then we went to a season where we couldn't get them midweek at all. And so we shifted to a season where we're like, you know what? Youth group is during church on Sunday mornings. Like, we're going to have youth program. And now we're at a small church. And so we only have one service. And so
Mm,
there's the debate of like, okay, well then they can't go to the main worship service and they're not
right.
experiencing the main worship service. And that's not necessarily healthy. When they go away to college, then they don't have an appetite for what's happening in a main worship service. They only know what's happening in youth ministry. So eventually, a few years later, we shifted again. So we've
Hmm.
done some big shifts. And to be honest with you, people didn't bat an eye that much.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that is what, for me personally, in our context, I've sort of come to realize I can put a whole lot of stress into what people's reactions will be and what the outcome of my decision to do something will be. But obviously, I've put a ton of thought into it. And if people
Right.
respect your leadership, then they're going to be okay with it. And that has really been the outcome for us.
Interesting. So the changes didn't really cause you a lot of grief with the church leadership or with parents.
No.
That's interesting, because I have a friend who is currently, he wants to change his youth group meeting night from a Friday to Sunday, and he can't get it past the leadership to begin with, which is a whole other story. But
Yeah.
it's just a big deal to change that thing. We've made a couple big changes over the years. One was I killed Sunday school. I'm the youth pastor who killed Sunday school. And it was a process of several years, and there's various reasons that we went that direction. But in the end, a few people were upset with me. One of those families, I think they later left the church. I think that was maybe the beginning of their kind of disharmony with us. But overall, there wasn't much in the terms of kickback.
Yeah.
And then the other big change we made was 5 years ago, we've always done a conference. There's a Evangelical Free Church conference for students in the summers every other year. And we decided to not go to that anymore and instead to replace it with summer camp every year, which was much less expensive and more inclusive of who we could take. And so we're into this will be year 4. That's a significant shift because that conference was a big deal for us probably went 10 times. So, but those are important changes. They kind of give a new spin on youth ministry, and they are required when the demographics or the culture or whatever of the church has changed. So
I think the key is that if you're not evaluating and asking the question of whether something needs to be changed, and you may come to a conclusion that it doesn't need to be changed, but I think we need to always be asking that question, and we need to always be looking and evaluating the things that we're doing, because I think that, not that I want to say growth is the most important thing, but growth in some nature, right? It's not just numbers growth, but like spiritual growth, all these other kinds of growth in your ministry is really important to us and valuable. And so we need to be asking the question, and I'm going to be butchering this, but I was in a coaching program with Marco Stryker, highly recommend, Youth Cartel coaching program. And we talked about sort of this idea of, church growth, and like, it was really interesting to me. It wasn't when you hit your peak numbers and your peak like goal, that's not when you're supposed to innovate. You're supposed to innovate before you get there, because if you've hit that point, you're already on the downward, on a bell curve. You're already starting to go down. And I think that's really hard. It's like you're actually supposed to start innovating when things are going great.
How do you know that though? How do you know where you are in the curve?
Yeah, a lot of evaluation.
Hey, what voices do you bring into that process? You can't just be the lone wolf youth pastor and his or her ideas on that all the time. There's got to be somebody else speaking into that, right?
Yeah, and I think the key is that before you can even get to that point, you have to have you have to have an established mission, values, where you're going. And I think something that's great to do with your team is develop the values for your ministry with a team of people. And so I think getting a team of people that includes parents and volunteer leaders and maybe church staff, and sort of combining and spending time, but you can't evaluate until you've developed what the heck you want to base your evaluations on.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Otherwise you're reinventing wheels for no reason, and your wheels are spinning.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I say all that, and it doesn't mean I've been good at it. So, but I think a growth area, something I'm, learning, working on.
It would be interesting, maybe a future conversation we can have, or bring in someone to talk with us about that is, what major trends should we be looking for maybe in the next few years of student ministry that we might want to consider what we do now to prepare for those changes.
Yeah.
If we can even have the foresight to see them.
Sure. Well, the problem, yes, I think that would be ideal if we could start preparing for what we think is coming. But I think sometimes we get so stuck in a rut in youth ministry that we're not even keeping up with what's happening in the moment now. So let's
It's true.
let's keep up, let's be studying, reading,
Yeah.
talking, evaluating to keep up with culture, not just culture, but like what's going on with youth ministry too.
Have you heard about this new social media platform called TikTok?
Oh no, Steve.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're 58 years old. It's like, what? The newest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just right. Like I don't think it's just culture, like social media.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
like knowing what teenagers are dealing with. It's knowing your own culture of your own students too, and keeping up with that too.
Yeah.
So,
anything you have in your head of an innovation that you see coming for your church in the next 12 months, 18 months, 2 years? Put you on the spot.
I know. I don't think I can get there quick enough.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'll think of it in an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just talking a lot as a whole church about. We were watching an Andy Stanley video yesterday, and he said 3 things. Something that stuck out to me. They wanted to make sure that the community that they're a part of knew that their church was there, was glad that the church was there, and is made better by the fact that the church is there. And I think that's something that we're really working on is what are we doing for the city? What are we doing for the community? And we are doing that even within our youth ministry. And we have heard the principal. We're different because we really only have 1 or 2 high schools we come from. But, we've heard the principal of the high school tell people like, yeah, Malibu Civic Church is great. They've done this. They've done that for us. So I think that's the way we're swinging, is just trying to be a part of the community instead of always making people come to us.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's a good conversation. Thanks, Shannon. We'll see what new ideas come out of this for us. Who knows? We have lots of traditions, but we're always open to changing them if it's for the best. Let's move into our next segment. Let's get to know your Sherpa time.
Get to know your Sherpa.
And, you probably, if you follow us on Instagram, you saw the result of the Whoville gingerbread village coming to our youth room. One of the kids took a bottle and smashed it.
It was pretty epic, honestly.
He was looking at me. He's like, I said, you can smash it. And he's like, really? I said, yeah, we want it to be smashed. And he's holding a bottle in his hand. I'm like, well, go ahead, kid, do it. So he did it, and it was a mess, but it was worth it for the video's sake.
I was like, this is a great video. And then a minute later, I was like, ooh, the cleanup.
Who's got to clean that up? Yeah. Anyway, what's your question?
All right. The question is, Steve, if you could live inside any sitcom, what sitcom would you live inside and why?
Oh, gosh. Well, sometimes I think I do live inside The Office.
Okay. Do you want to live inside The Office?
It's kind of an inside joke here of why that's the case, and I won't say any more. But no, I don't want to live inside The Office. That's a good question, man. I think I would probably want to live inside Cheers.
You know what's funny? That's
Did I steal yours?
I thought. No, I thought that's what you were gonna say.
Okay. Why?
I was just gonna make a joke about how you want to sit at a bar all day.
Well, it's an old show, so a lot of people probably don't even know what it is or understand the context. But the thing about Cheers was it's where you go, everybody knows your name. And so it's the comfort level of being in that place where friends are just gathering and chatting and talking. And I mean, I love that atmosphere. That's my backyard fire pit. That's my patio. That's my dinner out with friends. And so a lot of things go wrong in the context of Cheers, but if I could hang out with a group of close friends and just talk, that's what I would choose. Yeah,
that's not far off from my answer is the show Friends.
Okay.
And again, not necessarily because of the content of what's happening on the show specifically, other than that they live across the hall from their best friends. And I talk often to my closest friends about, gosh, if we all lived right next door to each other, you could watch my kid, I could watch your kid, we could go out to have walks like spontaneous, just things like that. Just the idea of living in that close proximity to your favorite and best community sounds great. So,
do you have that in your new house? Do you hope to have that at some point?
I have a few friends. I wouldn't say they're my best friends yet, but yeah, it's good. It's a little closer to that.
There's hope for that.
There's hope.
Good. That's good. Great question. Let's roll into our final segment for today. We're calling this In Case of Emergency, Break Glass. We were chatting before we started to record about what we were going to talk about today. And often we come into these conversations fairly unprepared, I would say, or at least not way out ahead of it. And so Shannon had this thought of, I guess your youth pastor was like, oh yeah, I mean, what did he say to you? Something like,
he said the theme of your episode should be being unprepared or something, kind of mocking me for being unprepared to go record a podcast. But he's right that in youth ministry, there are times when we show up to something. I mean, we will never admit to it, but we do sometimes show up not fully prepared. I don't want to, I'm trying not to confess. I'm trying not to confess too much. Okay. I'm trying to know how much I could confess here.
All right. But let me press into your confession. How much of your unpreparedness was your own fault, and how much of it is just unavoidable circumstances of being in ministry, having a family?
Sure.
Where's your excuse lie, Shannon? That's really the question.
Here's what I want to say. I'm going to blame the night of the week that my program was on for a whole year and has now been changed, partially because of this, to be honest with you. Okay. Our staff meeting was the same day as youth ministry for like a few years.
Okay.
And our staff meetings, love my staff, love the things, but they, I don't love them all the time. I feel pretty drained by them, but it's because we have to cover a lot when we get together. There's a lot that has to be covered. My brain spins. It works really hard. And then probably because of my own fault, I've left too much work for post-staff meeting for youth group. Mm-hmm. So that part's my fault. Okay, it's all probably my fault. And I'm too drained. And I get there and I'm like, I need to go have lunch and take a break before youth group.
Yeah.
So sometimes planning out the details just doesn't happen.
So it's a little bit of the schedule that's imposed upon you, a little bit of procrastination,
it's
or lack of time management, maybe.
Yeah.
And then it's just circumstances. Yeah.
And that's not every week, obviously, but there have been plenty of weeks that happens, and you're like,
sure.
How about you, Steve? You ever go unprepared?
Oh my gosh, I am a procrastinator by nature, so it's not good. It's something I really want to do better at, and I have to do better at, because we meet Sunday nights. So we have church Sunday morning, and then I have to come back. I either stay through. I often stay through, but sometimes I'll go home and come back. But I mean, it's Sunday afternoon. My wife works all week, so she's tired and resting, and I often just want to go home and watch football and relax.
Yep.
But I haven't finished my message. So I'm making my message, finishing that up, or put the slides together for the night, or, figuring out what game we're going to play. And man, sometimes I'm running like right up to the time that my volunteers show up. And those are often, I don't want to say they're the worst nights. I feel badly about it. Yeah. And so I'm not enjoying it as much as when I'm prepared.
Yeah.
That said, there are weeks where, if I'm preaching in morning service, or there's, a lot of events that the week before, I got to give myself some slack. Like, how would I ever have prepared everything by now?
Yeah.
It's not possible. And so you have to wing it sometimes. You can't be in student ministry and not have at least one wing, if not two, for the days that you got to wing it, right? You just have to.
I'll be honest. I often leave the game as the part that I'm not prepared for. Okay. Yeah. The game is what I'm not always prepared for. Or sometimes, I've got a screen game, or something planned, but not enough kids showed up for some weird reason to do that plan. And so it's like, there's this part of me that was always living in this, gosh, I've got to have multiple plans anyways, so I'll just come up with the plan when I see how many kids get there. Not on the message, but on the game. And I've been in youth ministry long enough to look at a crowd and come up with a game usually. So
Of course, we have that in our back pocket. That's just typical, and it's totally fine. Um, I think for me, the reason I want to be prepared is I don't think the students really know.
sure.
There are very few nights where things have been so unprepared and gone so poorly that anybody but me would have even known.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing that it does for me when I am prepared is then I feel like I'm completely present in the moment
Mm-hmm.
relationally, because I'm not thinking about, oh crap, I didn't do those 4 other things. I got to sit at the computer for another 15 minutes and finish up.
Yeah.
And so as kids come in, I'm relaxed and I'm ready to talk to them and be with them and enjoy it. So it's really I think it's more for me than for them.
For me, being prepared, I realized, and this is what pushed me to get better at it, honestly, was that if I'm not prepared, my leaders don't have as much confidence and respect in me. And so if I
Yeah, that
want
too.
to improve my ability to create a great volunteer and leadership team, I need to be really prepared so that I can spend plenty of time walking them through the plan, delegating parts of the plan to them, giving them leadership, and letting them have more confidence in me. Because the nights that I'm like, they're like, what are we going to play tonight? And I'd be like, you'll see when I decide. Then they don't even have a role in that necessarily. I mean, they'll participate, but I've just realized I really have to push myself to be prepared so that I can create a better leadership team. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely gains respect when they feel like you have taken the time to prepare professionally for their arrival. Makes them feel honored, or their time feels valued when we treat them like that. So yeah, that's a good point too. But man, again, 30 nights, 40 nights a year. Just the perpetual nature of youth ministry. You got youth group the week after the retreat that you're still exhausted from, and you got another event. You've got 2 Valentine's parties because you're crazy coming up, right?
Exactly.
You get done what you can get done, and you just put the cape on and you wing it. So
yes. Put the cape on. We're superheroes. Is that what you're calling us, Steve?
I think all youth workers are superheroes, Shannon. Yeah.
I bet Brock is always prepared. I bet he's just not a procrastinator.
You think so?
No, I'm joking. I bet he's a procrastinator too. I wonder if it's a youth pastor thing to be a procrastinator, like one of our characteristics.
I don't know. Maybe.
Let us know.
Maybe.
If you're a listener, let us know if you're a procrastinator or not.
I know it stresses out my teammate, my girls director, when I'm not prepared, or I can't ask her to wing it. She has to know in advance what is expected of her. Okay. And it's only fair. So I can respect that, even if I can't always meet her demands. So Shannon, what has kept you in it this week in student ministry?
Ooh, I got to go to a few high school basketball games this week.
Ooh.
And I just so enjoy when I'm able to hang out with students outside of the church. The light on their face when they see you there is amazing. I just think it's the best way to let them know that you care about them. I got to see one of my students make her very first ever in a game basket. It was awesome. So sweet. I know it's so silly, but like she's a freshman. The whole stands blew up for her because they all knew, and it was great. And that's just loved it, keeping me going.
I was teaching this week in both high school and middle school. We meet separate nights, and we do a series a couple times a year where it's the same both nights. And so I gave the message Sunday. I gave it again last night. It was about the value of being a good listener. And I just felt good about it. I feel like I'm teaching the kinds of things that hopefully will translate into really good Christian followers of Jesus, like the characters of Jesus. Of course, they probably weren't listening. So, but hopefully a little bit of it got through. And then we did this really cool experience in our family groups as a follow-up where we broke them into 3s. And they took turns with 2 of them asking the third person questions for 2 to 3 minutes. Nothing but questions, no comments. with each question supposed to go a little bit deeper than the one before to actually get to know people. And then they would switch roles.
Did you write out the questions, or did they come up with the
No,
questions?
we gave them a couple possible prompts, and then we let them go. And I sat in with the senior girls in their family group. And of course, of all the groups that are going to do that well, it's going to be the senior girls. But it just warmed my heart to see them like circle up in threes and genuinely get to know each other better and ask these really sweet questions. And I left with a big smile on my face.
It's awesome.
So, yeah.
Love it.
Well, I think that wraps up episode 12. And maybe we'll have Brock back next time. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see if we let him back in the room. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the show, we would love it if you liked us, followed us. You can email us at theyouthministrysherpas@gmail.com. And we would just love for you to become a fan of the show and share it with others. So, hey, it's been fun. We'll see you back here next time.
See you later.
All right, bye.